feet are wet. My third pair of pants in an hour. About a foot. Just a foot, but it's so windy that it got really high in places. We can really high.
So how often do you meet with a dietitian?
Never. I don't go to the doctor anymore.
Welcome to Tucker Carlson Today. For months now, you have heard from members of the Democratic Party and useful idiots in the Republican Party who really need to get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol. And on this one narrow issue, we have to say we strongly agree. We should know. The country has a right to know what exactly happened that day and why. And so for the past several months, we've been looking into that. We've created a three-part documentary called Patriot Purge, part Tucker Carlson Originals, that begins this week. Accompanying the release of that documentary, we thought we would sit down at length with the one journalist who has been on this story doggedly, without ceasing, for months, who's broken more news about what actually happened on January 6th than anyone else. It's a journalist you may not have heard of before this all started. How did she wind up covering this so well? Where's the New York Times? Those are other questions we may not address today, but we want to talk today to Julie Kelly, who was reported on this, as we said from the very beginning, about what we now know. Julie Kelly, thanks so much for coming on. Thank you. And I'm just going to ask you at the outset, like, how did this fall to you?
I don't know. That's a great question. We were kind of regrouping at American Greatness, how we were going to cover the Biden presidency, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just go back to climate change and, see what's going to happen in the administration with that. Kind of thinking things were going to simmer down after the Trump presidency was over, and then this just happened, and I think my take from the very beginning about what happened that day was different than what was being spun out as the narrative.
Did you go to Columbia Journalism School?
I did not. I went to Eastern Illinois University. Go Panthers.
It's just so interesting because your reporting hasn't simply been ideological, which is to say I don't like it only because I agree with it, though I happen to. But I like it because it's filled with new information that nobody else has. Like, you've done actual reporting on this from the very beginning. And do you ever think to yourself, as a graduate of Eastern Illinois University, like, why am I the one who's doing this?
I do sometimes wonder. It definitely was one of those things that even a lot of journalists on the right did not want to touch at all. But I think seeing right out of the box what these judges were saying and ordering people like Coy Griffin, the Cowboys for Truck guy, who didn't even go in the building. That was really my first article on it. And sentencing him to pretrial detention. He wasn't even charged with a violent crime. And you have judges lecturing him about his beliefs about the 2020 election, using that as justification to keep him behind bars before trial. And I thought, this can't be real. I'm reading these articles thinking this can't be real. And that was just the beginning. That was, early February.
That really says it all. Holding a man in prison because you disagree with his opinions on the election.
And that is legitimately what's been happening, Tucker. So that was the first case that I studied. I opened up a Pacer account. I'm not a lawyer. And so I'm sort of addicted to it now. But that's where you can get all the court documents and you can find out when the hearings are. And because all the hearings are virtual now, I could call in and listen to what was being said in court. And it was just mind-blowing, not just what the prosecutors were saying, but what the judges were saying. We're talking about judges on Trump judges, Obama judges, Reagan judges, who were telling these people this was a horrible stain on our country and condemning them for doubting the legitimacy of the 2020 election. And what the prosecutors were calling them, terrorists and rioters, insurrectionists. And so that's really, it was professional, but now it's taken on almost a personal crusade on behalf of the people whose lives are being destroyed by this investigation.
So you did, what you're describing is journalism. Like, there are a lot of ways to look at what you're doing, but one of them, I guess, the hopeful way to look at it is the traditional media collapse and refuse to just do basic reporting, like listen to the hearings, and the gap is filled by people like you. You're doing a better job than they did. So anyway, I'm grateful for what you've done. You've just brought a lot of information to light that people who don't even agree with you can just assess and make up their own mind. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for covering.
So I want to take an overview. I want to begin with an overview of what we're seeing in the aftermath of January 6th, which is what you've been covering. It really feels like a war on terror, but the domestic version. So here's a portion from the documentary we just did. I want to get your reaction to.
The left is hunting the right. Hunting the right. Hunting them across the country dragging them to D.C. in the middle of the night, sticking them in the gulag, sticking them in Guantanamo Bay for American citizens, leaving them there to rot.
Today we take an essential step in defeating terrorism while protecting the constitutional rights of all Americans.
It's now the law of the land that the military can arrest American citizens, hold them indefinitely without charges or trial.
The Patriot Act. It was a decision made in fear. Now that surveillance apparatus, the NSA, the FBI, the DOJ, is turning inside of the United States.
That second where you don't remember your childhood dead. You sort of have to relive it every single day.
So, the image that this last year has evoked, this last 9 months has evoked in my mind, is the aftermath of 9/11, which of course you remember well, where the country's whole law enforcement military apparatus was sort of harnessed in one direction against this enemy called Al-Qaeda. This looks like the mirror image of that, where that same apparatus is being harnessed but against American citizens. Do you think that's an overstatement?
No, it is absolutely true. And I'm glad that you mentioned that in the documentary, because people really have to understand that this is a war on terror. The Democrats, the Biden regime, is turning against Americans on the political right. I mean, when you have Chris Wray on March 2nd go to Capitol Hill and call January 6th an act of domestic terror, that opens up all sorts of opportunities for every federal agency to run with that, which is exactly what they've done.
Wait, can I ask you a question? So when Chris Wray, the head of the FBI,
Yes,
uses the phrase terror,
yes,
that has like bureaucratic implications. That's not just, I mean, that's not something he said accidentally,
no,
correct?
that's right. He said it by design, because then it gives his imprimatur to what the prosecutors are doing. So we now have more than 650 Americans who have been charged with the Capitol breach probe, as they call it. And so it's okay then for prosecutors, which they have called some of these people terrorists in court. They want to add terrorist enhancements to their sentencing, even for people charged with non-violent crimes. And so it's not an exaggeration to call this a war on terror against Americans. That's exactly what it is.
That's horrifying.
Yes, it is.
So just to be completely clear, those 650 have been charged. Those all pertain directly to the events of January 6th. Now give us the death toll that day. How many died on January 6th, just to get our baseline facts established, and how did they die?
So 4 people died. Ashley Babbitt, as you know, you cover in the documentary. Roseanne Boyland, who is very likely, Tucker, that Capitol Police and DC Police also were responsible for her death as well. So she's a 34-year-old Trump supporter from Georgia. And then 2 other men who suffered heart attacks.
How did she die?
Well, what the medical examiner's office said, of course, another hyper-partisan agency out of Washington, D.C., said she died of a meth overdose. But there's plenty of video and eyewitness accounts by people who were there, who saw her attacked by police. This is in this lower west terrace of the Capitol building, where they were spraying a very noxious gas on protesters, and she was probably trampled to death too. So there was a lot going on in this tunnel. Police attacking protesters, also pushing them out. And there's video of her laying on the ground. Protesters are trying to help resuscitate her, and the police continue to attack her. She's been dragged back through this tunnel by a police officer, and according to Officer Harry Dunn, one of the U.S. Capitol Police officers, he takes her body into Steny Hoyer's office, where they keep her body until the paramedics arrive. They take her out, and she is pronounced dead at 6:09.
So do you think that she died how?
I think she probably died based on what happened in that tunnel. A combination of things. The police who were attacking protesters with this very noxious gas. There's a lot of testimony about that. They were also beating people inside that tunnel, but they were also pushing this mob, and apparently she got trapped underneath of it. And you could hear her friend, who's yelling at police, "We need help. She's dead. She's dying. She's dead." And instead of helping her like the police should do, they continued this brawl with protesters. And then I think when they recognized what had happened to her, they dragged her back through the tunnel into the building to, I guess, obscure what happened to her. So there's still a lot to be learned about what happened to her as well.
Okay. So that's two. I interrupted you, and then two others died. You said of heart attack.
Of heart attack, yeah.
So I heard, personally, and I think all who watch television heard, that there were a bunch of people killed by the mob that day. How many were killed by the mob that day?
No one.
No one.
Was killed. Right. The only people killed that day were Trump supporters.
Ashley Babbitt was famously, I think our viewers are familiar with that, overstate. Can't say enough that she was an armed woman, barely over 5 feet tall, was shot without warning by a cop with a documented history of lunatic weapons behavior.
Right. That's absolutely
Really an atrocity. Officer Sicknick. We have, of course, documentaries for our viewers who are not current on Officer Sicknick. I want to see this up and then get your stab of view on this.
January 6th is being used as a pretext to strip millions of Americans, disfavored Americans, of their core constitutional rights and to defame them as domestic terrorists. But what exactly happened on January 6th? How much of what we were told about that day was a lie? Darren Beatty of Revolver News is one of the few in media who's done real reporting on what actually happened on January 6th.
The establishment narrative.
The worst single act of political violence since the Civil War.
Donald Trump supporters killing police officers was MAGA bloodline.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the hours-long attack. They beat the Capitol police officer to death with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
He died at the age of 42 after he was bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher.
A rioter hit Officer Sicknick in the head with a fire extinguisher.
Hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher.
There's just one problem with this story. It never happened.
Officer Sicknick, your reporting on this is has no peer in my position. Give us the Officer Sicknick story.
So what happened was, the next day, on January 7th, late that evening, the U.S. Capitol Police issue a statement that Brian Sicknick has died in the line of duty, killed in the line of duty, by Trump protesters. That was their official release. So
That's
this
the
comes out.
first release from
That was
Capitol
the first
Police.
release on January 7th. And he died that evening. So he died that evening. Apparently they had this press release ready to go to exploit his untimely death. He did die at the age of 42. Then the next day, so I think part of what they did, they wanted to create this narrative that the Trump insurrectionists had killed a police officer. I also think that they wanted to bury what had happened to Ashley Babbitt. Because what really infuriated the crowd that day, aside from being attacked by police, as you show in the documentary, is word spread that police had shot and killed a female Trump supporter. So I think this was also part of obscuring that. The next day, January 8th, the New York Times published a report based on two anonymous sources that Brian Sicknick was bludgeoned to death by a fire extinguisher. And then that's how that whole storyline seeded. You see clip after clip of the media just accepting that without question. They didn't even want any kind of verification. Well, where was he? Wouldn't there be footage? If a police officer was being bludgeoned to death by Trump people, there would be some kind of footage showing that. Nothing. They just took it, they went with it. And so that was their story for 5 weeks. It actually ended up in the Democrats' House impeachment memo. That New York Times article is still a footnote saying that Brian Sicknick was bludgeoned to death by a fire
Was anyone
extinguisher.
ever arrested for bludgeoning Officer Sicknick to death?
No, not. And so then on February 12th, the New York Times, the weekend before the Senate trial for Trump's second impeachment trial, the New York Times retracts the story, says, oh, never mind, that's not what happened to him. It was based on anonymous accounts, and so, oops, and that was the extent of it. But nothing else has been retracted, just that story.
So in the meantime, his body lied in state and he was Capitol.
That's it.
And it implies no disrespect for Officer Sicknick or his sad death to note that his passing was used as a political weapon by the left.
it created so many optics right after the New York Times published that article. So you had a procession of police cars through Washington, D.C., silence throughout Washington, D.C. as they're carrying his body. And then, of course, he flight and stayed for 2 days. He was eulogized by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Joe Biden and Jill Biden showed up to give their respects. You could see Joe Biden walking away, shaking his head. He's then transported in another formal ceremony to Arlington National Cemetery, where he's buried. So these are all the optics that were created in February. So then they pivot to...
This is just all a manufactured... It's all fake.
Fabricated, yes. And they
Sorry,
were all
interrupting you. It's just hard to digest this.
No, it really is. I mean, think of the people who are ceremonial, who lie in state in the rotunda, and they're ex-presidents, and not saying that, Brian Sicknick's life obviously is important, and it's tragic that he died that young. But the Democrats exploited his death in the most grotesque way, using him and his family to create these optics that the Trump people, Trump supporters, had killed this man in the line of duty. And so that was, you're standing there with the President of the United States. Republicans, every leader, Republican and Democratic lawmaker were there for 2 days to pay their respects. And what happens? They retract the story. The next week, this happens the first weekend of February. 5 days later, the New York Times comes out and says, oh, never mind. That's not exactly what happened to him. So then what happens to him next? He dies from an allergic reaction to chemical spray. That was the next narrative that they go into. And that turned out to not be true either. Didn't stop, though, 2 men, Julian Cater and George Tanios, from being arrested in the middle of March, charged with assaulting Officer Sicknick with chemical spray. Julian Cater still is in jail awaiting trial that won't start until next year. George Tanios has been released, but they are now the scapegoats to keeping alive the story that Trump, the lie, that Brian Sicknick was killed by Trump supporters on January 6th.
Every time I talk to you, I get upset. No, you just have to... Because you've kept track of all the information systematically as a journalist should. And I'm grateful. So, how do you do that?
So the D.C. Medical Examiner's Office came out in April, said that he died of natural causes because he had so-called blood clots. And so they had to, this was far past the time when normal autopsy results would be released, so they delayed it as much as they possibly could. And so he died of natural causes. Now, they released the report, but the D.C. Medical Examiner gives an interview to the Washington Post saying, well, here's the official report, but we still believe that the events of that day somehow contributed to the stress on Brian Sicknick, and he had the stroke accordingly. So the lie continues. The Capitol Police, to this day, still insist that Brian Sicknick was killed in the line of duty. To this day. So does Joe Biden. He just said it in a White House Rose Garden ceremony a few months ago, in honor of the police who were killed that day, being Brian Sicknick.
As you noted, a lot of Republicans went along with this charade, this manufactured lie designed to change the country undemocratically. The ones who went along with it, and there were so many, do you think they understood that they were participating in a charade?
I think some of them do. How did the term insurrection begin that afternoon as the events were happening? You saw a lot of Democratic lawmakers start tweeting out that this was an insurrection, that this was an armed insurrection, which of course we also know is not true. There were no firearms recovered in the Capitol that day. The only person who used a firearm that day was Lieutenant Michael Byrd, who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt. George W. Bush, in a statement released about 6 o'clock on January 6th, the top headline says, George W. Bush's comment on the insurrection at the Capitol. So this doesn't just happen. This.
No. Well, but I think in the case of George W. Bush, stupid, old, bitter.
Right.
But there are a lot of much more his vice president's daughter now serves in the Congress from Wyoming.
Right.
She's not stupid. So you said, oh, well, she's smart. And she's going along with every lie. Why is that? Why would Liz Cheney go abet these lies, do you think? Do you have a good guess?
I think in her case, and almost the Bushes too, they're trying to refurbish their image. These are the same people who called the Cheneys war criminals for the better part of 2 decades. So now she's kind of refurbishing the family image. and going along with the left, hoping that they will accept her, which of course they have. She's the conscience now of the Republican Party, apparently, because she's going along with this insurrection line. But what she's doing is so dangerous and reckless, because what they don't know, Tucker, is how this is destroying the lives of so many people, caught up in their little political games that they are conducting, at risk of what's happening, not just to people, but to all of us. If they could round up every single American who voted for Donald Trump, that is exactly what they would do. And so this is the punishment by proxy, the people who are caught up in this investigation, vilified in the media, etc., and people like Liz Cheney and George W. Bush, Mitt Romney, all of them going along with it. Really shameful.
One of the characterizations you heard.
The Ninja Turtles and Hero Wars. The legendary RPG Hero Wars welcomes new heroes to the battlefield. Unleash their full power in thrilling battles against sinister monsters. Unlock a unique hero and exclusive Shredder and Casey Jones skins during the event from December 2nd to 21st. Play Hero Wars for free now. Available on PC and mobile.
Immediately, along with insurrection, I watched this stuff unfold. I had a child who was in the building. I saw as much as anybody else who was following this saw. I hated some of that breaking windows. I hate breaking windows, but who doesn't, period. Don't like vandalism. But it was not an insurrection. It was so really a weird thing to say. My first thought was, it wasn't an insurrection. It was like pissed off voters. It was exactly what it looked like, right? Or seemed to be. They called it insurrection. They also called it racist, which I also found confusing. From the very first moments, they're saying that this was a white supremacist insurrection. A sincere question to you: has there ever been any evidence that surfaced in the subsequent months that there was racial animus at the point of any of this?
No, absolutely not. And I will tell you, Tucker, of all the documents that I've looked at, all the posts that, say, social media posts or texts between people who have been charged, I've seen no racial slurs. You have one person, Tim Hale Cusinelli, who is the face of white supremacists. They took some memes off his phone, some photographs. They were offensive. They were things that you would off his cell phone. So they took memes that he had posted, that he had on his own phone. Well, they did interview almost 4 dozen of his co-workers to ask them about his views, his political views, and whether they thought he was a white supremacist. Yes, that actually happened. And that was our government. He was actually spied on by the Naval Intelligence Services, and they conducted this questionnaire. He was working as a contractor at a Navy base, and they interviewed his coworkers, asking for their opinions on his...
He committed thought crimes.
That's exactly it. It's in his charging documents.
Where is he now?
He's in the D.C. jail. He committed no violent crime, but he basically turned himself in. He was arrested in the middle of January, and he has been behind bars in D.C. Since he was transported there at the beginning of February. Didn't assault a cop, didn't vandalize, didn't break a window, didn't have a weapon, nothing. But he is the face of white supremacy because they interviewed his coworkers. He had some not very nice memes. He dressed up as Hitler a few times, which, okay, is weird, right? But as far as we know, not a crime. And so he is the face of white supremacy, and he's been incarcerated ever since.
Those of us from D.C. can attest. That's probably the worst place you can be held in the United States.
That's right. That's the intention.
So we interviewed a guy called Mark Ibrahim, who was a DA agent, federal officer, who was there, didn't break any laws that we're aware of. To destroy him. Two, he makes an appearance in the documentary.
It is a purge aimed at legacy Americans.
How are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump?
One of my team earlier today called de-Bathification.
In the first war on terror, the invasion of Iraq, the so-called de-Bathification of Iraqi society began.
The hunt is on.
We occupied their capital.
Tonight in Washington, D.C., a green zone perimeter has been established.
We hunted down supporters of corporate Iraq.
The National Guard scouring for explosives and extremists.
We purged the military, their law enforcement agencies, and all public supporters of the Trump regime. Nothing like this has ever taken place on American soil. Until now.
Legislators around the country have already begun attempting to weed out extremism.
DEA agent Mark Ibrahim was forced from his job and later indicted simply because he was near the Capitol protests on January 6th.
Merely for having been there on that day and near the Capitol, Mark lost his job, lost his security clearance.
Ibrahim says he went to the Capitol that day because he was invited by an FBI informant, a man he had known in Iraq. Ibrahim says that the two of them stood outside the building. The FBI informant turned to him and strongly encouraged him to enter the Capitol building. Ibrahim knew that was illegal, so he refused to do it. Mark Ibrahim now faces 15 years in federal prison.
Wow. So there you have a man who did nothing wrong, that we can tell, and they're threatening to destroy his life. But he is, and I should say, as far as I know, a conservative. So to what extent do you believe, having looked at literally hundreds of these cases, political ideology plays a role in the way justice is done?
It is the primary reason why prosecutors and judges are going along with this investigation. It is based solely on their involvement on January 6th, that they are Trump supporters, and that they doubt the legitimacy of the election. You have one case, a man named Robert Reeder, who is charged with 4 misdemeanors, didn't do anything violent, wasn't a conspirator, wasn't incited by President Trump. He pleaded guilty to parading in the Capitol. That's actually a crime, just FYI, parading in the Capitol, which a lot of people have been charged with and some are pleading guilty to. The government wants to keep him behind bars. He actually was just sentenced to
Wix, one platform, any website. Unlimited creation. Describe your needs and goals. An AI will transform your tailored brief into a unique website that's ready to perform in minutes. Wix.
$3 months in prison on a misdemeanor. He has no criminal background. What the government, Joe Biden's prosecutors, used in court to justify their sentencing was memes that were taken off of his Facebook account, memes that were not nice about Joe Biden, that said negative things about Nancy Pelosi, that said things like the election was stolen. These are actual screenshots of memes that were taken off of his social media account, given to a judge to explain why this man should go to jail. I mean, that is just nothing you would think would ever happen.
Well, it's totalitarian. Did anybody in the so-called system of justice, when this happened, say, whoa, wait a second here. These are constitutionally protected political views. America exists so that people can express those views. Like, did anyone impose a reality check on this at all?
No one did. And in fact, the judge was Thomas Hogan, who's a Reagan appointee. He's 82 years old. He probably should retire. But he did not stop, as this man was literally begging for his life. He's been abandoned by everyone, like a lot of these capital defendants have been. Their lives have been destroyed. They've been abandoned by their family. In Robert Reeder's case, he told the court his church asked him to stop going there because he was such a distraction. So he was fired by FedEx. He has no money. He has nothing left. He begged for mercy.
His
and
church asked him to stop coming?
Yes, that's what he said in court.
I hope they're punished for that.
I hope so too.
I mean, long term. I mean, for eternity.
Right.
That's just
Somewhere
the
else.
worst thing I can imagine.
Yes. So no, the judge did not stop the government from using these Facebook memes against Robert Reeder, who now will be going to jail for 3 months.
People are going to be offended that I asked this, but I can't control myself. So, like, what about the president on whose behalf they were gathered that day? Like, has anybody sent them money? I mean, has anybody... They've raised the people around him, Brad Parscale, all these people are getting rich, right? Claiming that the last election was rigged, which it clearly was, obviously.
Yes.
And they're making all this money, and all these people are sending all this money down to Florida. But is any of that money going to defend these people who went to this rally on behalf of that candidate?
Not that I know of. And I will say no. No. And it's a question that I've been asking myself, and I know a lot of them have been asking too. You know, we were there, and a lot of them were there to support Trump. They were there to support Trump. They were there to protest the election being taken from him unlawfully. But aside really from a few comments about political prisoners, and he has said a few things about Ashley Babbitt, to my knowledge, and I'm pretty involved in what's happening with the defendants, especially the detainees, no, there has not been any financial aid coming from anyone of a prominent position to help these people.
I just find that appalling. I really do. I really find that appalling.
I do too.
Has anybody, actually, I'll try to keep it quick. Has anybody in a mainstream news outlet done real reporting on this that you're aware of?
There are, obviously Darren Beatty is doing a lot of reporting, but if you look at what's happening on the other side, you know, the Washington Post, New York Times, who is covering it, I will give a little credit to the New York Times, who they did confirm in a report at the end of September that FBI informants had infiltrated the Proud Boys, which is this alleged militia group that had no weapons on January 6th. None of the militia groups, by the way, had weapons at the Capitol that day. And so they did confirm that the FBI had informants. We're going to find out a lot more about that. But there are places, Politico, Huffington Post, BuzzFeed is following this very closely. But all these people are described as insurrectionists, as rioters. You know, they're vilified as cop killers. They're described in the most heinous terms. And so they're really the ones who are helping to fuel this hatred and to justify this war on terror that's being turned on people on political right. So, but otherwise, I'm surprised at some of the outlets who just still to this day refuse to cover this.
So to the question of the DOJ's involvement in that day, we've looked at, I can't even imagine how many hours of footage you've looked at from January 6th. You've interviewed a lot more than anyone else. What's your sort of top line view of the DOJ's involvement in those events?
So I think it's really hard to not expect that the FBI was involved in it. That's the nicest way that I could say it. But if you look back what happened in 2020, and we know now that there was an FBI operation called Operation Cold Snap, which was opened up in the spring of 2020, that was intended to, we were told, or some were told, to surveil these militia groups who were conducting these lockdown rallies, etc. So this is what began and then led to the Whitmer kidnapping caper, as you talk about. And so this was FBI agents who were infiltrating these groups, the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, Three Percenters, etc. And I think that is what orchestrated the Whitmer caper. They also tried to orchestrate an assassination plot of Ralph Northam, the Virginia governor, that they couldn't get off in time before the election. And so this possibly very strongly, I believe, likelihood that this also led to the events of January 6th. That we're going to find out a lot about informants who are not just in the Proud Boys, but in various groups, people who were undercover the night before at pre-rallies on January 5th, and then led to, instigating people, shepherding them, like Ray-ups, leading people to incite them, and then
Ray-ups being the apparently leader of the Oath Keepers, who's on video repeatedly, this thanks to the reporting of yours and of Revolver.News, telling people we're going to go into the Capitol, that everyone around him perceives him to be a federal informant.
Right. Very young. Right.
I want to play a clip from the documentary. We interviewed a bunch of different people, but one of them was someone who's served in the intelligence apparatus for many years. This is, I think, what we found on the DOJ's involvement that day.
It's no wonder people are taken to the streets, and I support that.
Show me where it says protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Peaceful protests.
Peaceful protests. Peaceful protesters. Too many see the protests as the problem. No, the problem is what forced your fellow citizens to take to the streets.
The media and Democratic Party leaders created the environment that made the January 6th violence all but inevitable. But were there other agitators there that day? Someone who might know is security analyst J. Michael Waller. For years, Waller worked as a professional agitator.
And my area of specialization has been political warfare, psychological warfare, and subversion. During the Cold War, I infiltrated Soviet International Front organizations for the purpose of causing provocations that would discredit the Soviets. And so we actually managed to provoke a fight to break out at the World Peace Council conference that the Soviets had been sponsored in Europe. So we had the headline in the Boston Globe, "Fight breaks out at World Peace Conference." January 6th was a political warfare operation. Having been trained by professional agitators in the past, I saw that this is a coordinated effort, that there are different cadres of agents, provocateurs, and other troublemakers with military-like precision in what was to become a storming of the Capitol.
You know everything about this, but just give us a summary of what we know about people who, by the terms they've said, clearly committed crimes, in some cases much worse than people who are still languishing in jail, and yet haven't been charged. Are there a number of these people?
There are, and I think that's what's so great about Darren Beatty's work, is it's one thing to focus on the people who have been charged what they are charged with, but then you have this whole group of people, prominent people, who have not been charged, and so we have quite a few in the Oath Keepers conspiracy case, including person one, Stuart Rhodes, who really, from the summer of 2020, was ginning up Oath Keepers for what was going to happen before and after the election. We have Thomas Caldwell, who said he was approached by Stuart Rhodes at a post-November rally and asked, hey, we do security. Do you want to come to, let's keep in touch, and you can come here and we will tell you when the rest of our events are going to be. And so it's just curious why person one in this wide-ranging conspiracy case where 20 defendants are having their lives destroyed, 3 of them are still in the D.C. jail, have been in the D.C. jail since last spring, but person one in the indictment is still not charged. You have a couple other people in the Oath Keepers case who have not been charged. Then you have the Proud Boys. So who were these FBI informants that the New York Times is talking about? Why do you see so many people, groups of Proud Boys, some of them with neon hats on? They were supposed to be nondescript. They weren't that day. You have 60 people who were involved in this chat group, but you still have only about 20 or 25 who have been charged 9 months later. Well, where are the rest of them? They were all working together. If this is a conspiracy and obstruction of an official proceeding, well, everyone should be charged. So the bigger question at this point is, who wasn't charged? Who are the people who have been ID'd, like Ray F., inciting the crowd or trying to provoke people? And why are they not charged versus 600?
It's a great question. It's a great question, and just to be clear, so this we're not making a direct allegation. I don't know that Ray Epps works for the feds, but given the tape that we've seen and aired, it's very strange that he hasn't been charged with anything with people who had nothing to do with it are still in jail. Speaking of Ray Epps, there's kind of an amazing piece of tape where he's whispering to somebody else right at the beginning of the fracas. Can you describe that?
So who he is talking to, excuse me, he is encouraging Ryan Samsel, who is the first person to breach the Capitol line.
The Trump rally that day, while the rally's in progress, and nod or shake your head if I'm getting this wrong, but while Trump is still talking, a group of people break off and move toward the U.S. Capitol. Okay? They get there. So there are people there, I think, breaching the Capitol in front of security lines before Trump even starts talking. And it's at that moment, which is the pivotal moment of the day, that you find this guy Ray Epps, this unindicted oath keeper, who's on tape repeatedly to different crowds, encouraging them, let's go break the law, still not indicted, whispering to whom?
His name is Ryan Samsel.
Ryan Samsel. Who's he?
He has the red hat on. So he's the one who does the breach. He pushes the police and pushes the barriers.
And is that really is that the first moment when things move into illegal territory?
It does, yes. Yep. So, and he has been charged.
Okay.
Epps has not.
So Ray Epps whispers to him how soon before he breaches.
2 seconds before.
So Ray Epps is, again, for the 5th time, video repeatedly telling people we're going to breach the Capitol. He's there at the moment the Capitol is breached, whispering to the guy who first breaches it, who's been charged, but he has not been charged.
That's right.
What the hell, Julie Kelly?
Well, I mean, that is the question. And that's what Derek Beatty is trying to uncover.
We've asked
Why
Vance to
happened?
come on the show. Haven't heard from him yet.
Right.
Is anyone you know spoken to him?
Not that I know.
How rich is the FBI's history of setting up crimes?
We know that it is. I mean, it's a lengthy history of it.
Yeah.
And you talk about it in the documentary.
Yeah.
So how would we expect that the FBI, knowing as political as it has become, especially the past few years, I mean, go back to Crossfire Hurricane. This is just an extension of that.
So you had famously this FBI director is a sort of sinister character, very sinister character, not a stupid character at all, very smart guy, but I would say bad guy, called Jim Comey. He leaves, he's replaced by this Chris Ray person. What about him?
Right.
And Chris Ray is supposedly a totally straight shooter, and he's gonna like get the department on its back, on its bearings, its moorings.
Right.
What do we know about Chris Ray? His role in all this?
Well, we do know from Cash Patel that the one person they could not reach on January 5th and 6th was Chris Ray. Now, where was he? What was he doing?
What do you mean they couldn't reach him?
So, they were in communications with military leaders, the president, trying to organize what was going to happen, what was going on that day.
Right.
The one person they could not reach was Christopher Wray, the FBI.
The head of our biggest law enforcement.
That's right. Where was he? What was he doing? So, no one has asked Chris Ray where he was on the 5th or 6th.
That's a little bit shocking.
I think
Do you
so.
give him the benefit of the doubt, or do you think that...
No, I don't think that he is entitled to the benefit of the doubt. I mean, and then how did the head of the Detroit field office, who oversaw the Whitmer kidnapping case, why was he suddenly moved to Washington, D.C. on October 13th?
Well, that gives us an opening here. I want to play. We actually covered the Whitmer case, which is an amazing case. And it's not just us. We've had I think BuzzFeed originally broke it.
They did.
Which is a loathsome site, but to their credit, they broke this.
It's a great case, yeah.
I think mostly feds.
Right. It was.
Conspiracy. It's like insane. Anyway, here's our take on that from the documentary.
Most Americans probably assume the chaos of January 6th was a result of intelligence failures or of simple government incompetence. But direct incitement by federal agents, the intentional entrapment of American citizens, no decent person wants to believe that. But increasingly there's evidence it is true. Federal agencies have a long history of ensnaring American citizens in manufactured plots.
The alleged plan was to kidnap the governor and put her on trial for treason, all because of Michigan's COVID lockdown.
The federal government thwarted an alleged plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan in a manner that included, shockingly enough, storming the state capitol. Interesting parallel. Well, it gets even better.
12 of the 18 conspirators were either FBI informants or undercover FBI agents. In other words, fully 2/3 of the people plotting to kidnap the governor of Michigan were working directly for the feds. It makes you wonder, if permanent Washington is willing to launch a second war on terror on its own citizens, what else are they capable of?
Well, exactly. I hate to self-quote, but if they're willing to do that, what else are they capable of? So this seems like a completely within bounds fair question for any American who believes in the American system to demand an answer to. How many lawmakers are demanding that answer? that you're aware of?
Not many. I mean, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin has sent several letters, and he's been pretty outspoken about wanting to know more information about what happened.
Yeah, how did Ron Johnson get so brave all of a sudden?
I don't know. I
mean, crisis changes people, and most people...
My car wears Coopers.
People get worse, but some people get better, and Ron Johnson is in the latter category.
He really is. I mean, he's been really a stand-up guy on this. And then you have a couple of Republican lawmakers, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar,
Yep.
Louis Gohmert. They've been not just wanting answers about January 6th, but also defending this DC gitmo and the people who are, detained there for months. But otherwise, no. Republican lawmakers have been largely silent on this entire issue.
What's it been like for you? I mean, since you've been the primary reporter covering this, and I think really shamed the rest of the press by doing so, I mean, have you felt under threat? Do you feel monitored? Is there any indication that your communications have been intercepted by anybody?
Right. I get that question a lot. I don't know. I mean, I assume sort of at this point that, we're all on someone's radar screen. But I try not to think about that because if you do, then it makes you afraid and it makes you weak. And so you can't think that way.
I think that's right.
And that's what they want. They want you intimidated out of doing your job.
I agree. And I invariably use obscene language in all of my texts just to amuse the people monitoring them.
Exactly. Right.
In the hope that someday they will run the New York Times. I'm trying to make them amusing.
It's going to be in your sentencing memorandum now. Now we know. It's going to be like,
and we all are.
That's right.
So how does this decelerate this new domestic war on terror?
I don't see it decelerating at all. I mean, how would it at this point when you have, the government in charge of everyone at the left who controls all the levers of power? It doesn't. And when you don't have Republicans who are going to stand up against it, Republican leadership is so weak right now that if they're not going to defend these people now, if they're not going to stand up, I did see a little glimmer of hope when they're fighting back about the FBI surveilling parents at school boards. I think that actually woke up a lot of people. Like, this is real. If we don't go along with what the regime wants, with what the media tells us, how to think, how to behave, then we are going to be under surveillance. So we started to see some pushback on that, and now they're kind of backpedaling on what they said about infiltrating or working with the FBI to surveil these parents. But I don't see it decelerating
Right.
at all.
So, I mean, they made a kind of mistake on social class there. So these are like professional moms they're messing with. I mean, you can't do that, actually.
Right.
You shouldn't be allowed to, but a lot of the January 6th defendants are working class people with financial trouble. They're what we used to call working class whites.
Right.
And everyone hates them. Period. They're the untouchables. So you can kind of do whatever you want to them.
Well, you can, and I think that is why the DOJ is targeting them, because they don't have means. They can't afford attorneys. I mean, every case is being handled out of D.C. So if they have any hope, they need to find a D.C. criminal defense attorney. Well, they're easily 6 figures just to put on a retainer. So a lot of these people have to have public defenders or court-appointed attorneys. So they have no shot. And you could hear the contempt, not just in the prosecuting documents from this DOJ. You could hear the contempt for these people in court. So when you have judges, they are personally offended that these people came from across the country into their personal fiefdom of Washington, D.C. We had one judge, you came here all the way from Texas? Well, yeah, you came here. It's the nation's capital. Like, why?
Yeah, it's my country.
It's my country. They talk about the Capitol, the sacred place. It's like a church to them. How dare you? One prosecutor said about Robert Reeder, your mere presence there that day was a desecration of the Capitol. Because he talked about everyone who had even stayed, presidents had been there, etc. Your presence was a desecration of the Capitol. Truck driver from Maryland.
Not an illegal alien, an actual American citizen.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, a man who's done nothing trying to raise his family. This is what a federal prosecutor says. And the judges just drip with contempt for these people. And they are gratified at punishing them. You have an Obama judge, I know you talked about her, Tanya Chuckton, who actually is going over what Geo did.
She's like actually a lunatic and a hater. I can feel the hatred on that woman.
Right. You can sense this and hear this from a lot of these judges. So what that judge is doing, DOJ, as awful as they are, will come in and say, okay, well, this person's leading to a misdemeanor. We're going to ask for 30 days, home incarceration or 2 years probation. What she's done in at least 4 cases is overridden what DOJ wants and put these people in prison to send a message, you people are not supposed to be here. What you did supporting this president, defying the election of this president, now you're going to be punished. You're going to go to jail. Yeah.
She has the
No,
right.
no.
She has the right to do this because she's a judge.
Yes, she does.
I've noticed in your reporting that some of the prosecutors, not all prosecutors are bad, but some of the ones whose words you have quoted come off as extremists, radicals, wild-eyed, religious nuts, scary people. Is that just my take, or what?
No, they are scary, radical, left-wing people who are drunk on their own power, because these judges are not holding these prosecutors accountable. Like you just said, no one is saying, hey, wait a second, this is out of line. These judges are going along with every continuance, everything that they present in court. It's widely accepted that this is a riot, that these are insurrectionists, that they are terrorists. No one is telling these prosecutors, no, this is out of line. And we're talking about people, this is pretrial detention hearings. These aren't even people who've been convicted of any crime yet. They're just arguing to keep these people behind bars. But with these prosecutors and the head prosecutor, Channing Phillips, who is now in his third gig as the acting D.C. U.S. attorney, he's a radical left-winger too. So they're dropping charges against BLM protesters from, say, Lafayette Square in June of 2020 for committing worse crimes than what happened on January 6th, where they're completely throwing the book at January 6th protesters.
One theme that arises again and again in your reporting is how offended they are by the ideas that some of these protesters and defendants have, and that they're trying to criminalize certain ideas.
Right.
Is that, you've noticed this
consistently, and it is across the board. Judges of both political parties who, that is exactly what they're doing. Criminalizing thought, criminalizing memes, criminalizing text between people. They will go through any personal detail from any of these protesters and use this against them. In one case, you have the case of Anna Morgan Lloyd, who is the grandmother from Indiana. So she had this court-appointed attorney, this radical left-winger, Heather Shaner, who gave her a list of books and movies she wanted Anna Morgan Lloyd to read so she could come to terms with her white privilege. And then basically...
Wait, what?
Yes. So this is the case of Anna Morgan Lloyd, Heather Shaner, who also is representing other people. This is the kind of representation these people have. And so gave her a list of books, and Heather Shaner's view is this is a great country, except it was born on genocide and on the backs of slaves. So she's trying to reprogram her Trump clients, give them books and movies to read so they can identify and acknowledge their white privilege, that white we're systemically racist. And so this woman goes to court, again, on a misdemeanor pleading, and basically says, I don't realize how bad other people have it, and I talked to, my brother-in-law, son-in-law, he's a Holocaust denier, how can this be? Telling the court, pleasing the court, okay, I'm cleansing myself of wrong thing.
Wait, Cambodia 1975 or United States 2021?
That's right. What's the difference? Except for mass.
This is scary, but the ideology, the idea that other people aren't allowed to have ideas that we disagree with,
that's right,
which is the opposite of the very premise of the country. That seems like nobody is standing to defend that premise.
There was actually a ruling today, Amy Berman Jackson, another Trump-hating judge, another lunatic, who actually today let a man out of the D.C. jail because he wrote a long letter saying how now he despises Trump, how the D.C. jail now is radicalized because they sing the national anthem every night at 9 o'clock, which the detainees do. And Amy Berman Jackson told this man he could leave, but he can't watch Fox News. He can't watch any political programming, and that she wanted
Berman Jackson, who isn't actually a nutcase.
Yeah, she
in my opinion, I followed the case. She tried to throw someone in prison for life for nothing, literally nothing.
Right.
She has commanded someone. You can get out of jail, but you're not allowed to watch Fox News.
Right. Fox News, and she said all political. Yeah, I think she caught herself and then said, "Well, I don't want you watching any political TV. You can't watch MSNBC either."
Is she God now, or is she a judge?
That's what they're telling them what they can watch. They can't be on the internet. One man was sent back to jail because he was online. He wasn't supposed to be on his computer. I don't know why. He was watching Mike Lindell's whatever, some program that he had, and he was caught by his probation officer, and he was thrown back in jail. And the prosecutor actually used the fact of what he was watching as reason why he was a danger and had to go back to jail.
And this was all totally fine with George W. Bush and Liz Cheney and the rest of them. This is totally fine.
Yes, I would think so. I mean, they're the war on terror architects, right? So George W. Bush and Liz Cheney, because they were repudiated by Donald Trump, because he called them out, called out George W. Bush, called out Liz Cheney's father on the Iraq War, said what a mistake it was, weapons of mass destruction, etc. This is their way to get revenge, I think is part of it too, but they certainly have not stated any objections to turning this against American citizens. I would expect that they embrace it.
And if this were a fair country, you'd have a, what do they call it, Pulitzer Prize or whatever?
This is way better.
Julie Kelly, you're a brave person, you're a great reporter. I do think in the long run you will receive the recognition that you deserve from thinking decent for what you've done. I will tell you now, I'm grateful.
Well, thank you for covering it too.
Thank you. Yeah, just amplifying your reporting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Friday night edition, Tucker Carlson's Night. We are live, by the way, as always, so if we use profanity, you'll hear it. I'm trying not to. Ever notice how the biggest stories get the least attention? Weird how that works. The fake Duchess from Santa Monica spends an hour talking to Oprah about her skincare regime, and it's the lead of every morning show in America. Joe Biden institutes a government-wide system of racial discrimination that dwarfs Jim Crow, and nobody seems to notice. It happened yesterday, by the way. Did you know that? Probably not, because there was no press conference or signing ceremony, no media coverage. But 24 hours ago it happened. Biden restructured the entire executive branch of the U.S. government to discriminate on the basis of a
Ninja Turtles and Heroes. The legendary RPG Hero Force welcomes new heroes to the battlefield. Unleash their full power in thrilling battles against sinister monsters. Unlock the unique hero during the event from December 2nd to 21st. Play Hero Force for free now. Available on PC and mobile.
Equal characteristics. He made that announcement on the White House website, and it proclaims that within 30 days, every federal agency, all of them, from the Department of Justice to NASA to the Social Security Administration, all of them, all must, quote, ensure that they have a agency equity team within their respective agencies to coordinate the implementation of equity initiatives. And these Maoist equity teams will report to something called the Gender Policy Council. And the White House, quote, environmental justice officer. Is the environmental justice officer carrying a sidearm? We don't know, actually. We do know that running all of this, which is the largest racial tracking bureaucracy since the fall of Nazi Germany, will be former President Barack Obama. To be doing that is always through his longtime lackey and cutout, Susan Rice. Rice's goal, the goal of the entire initiative, is to place the federal government, all of it, in opposition to a very specific slice of the American population, not a foreign population, our own population. Here's how it works. Every single person in the United States will qualify for one of Joe Biden's many protected categories, except straight white men. So we're all in this together, except those guys who are on the outs. It's all of us versus them. Straight white men, they will not be protected because they are, by virtue of being straight and white and male, the cause of the problem. They're the enemy. So this is a big change. It's got enormous consequences. Among other things, it makes you wonder, why would straight white men continue to pay their taxes? And by the way, what percentage of taxes in the United States are paid by straight white men? That's one statistic you never hear. Why is that? But if you're one of them, you may wonder, wait, I'm working half the year for the government, which takes my money, and then uses it to demonize me and disenfranchise me from a government I thought I was an equal owner of. I thought we were all in this together. We're all citizens. But I still have to pay half my income to people who hate me? Why would I do that? It seems masochistic. Well, you do that because you have no choice. The IRS has more guns than you do. It's that simple. Meanwhile, don't expect a government contract or an SBA loan or even decent service from the clerk of the DMA. You're a domestic enemy now. You're an English-speaking version of Vladimir Putin. The equity agenda is your personal sanctions regime. It's amazing if you think about it. And someday we'll all pause long enough to wonder how this could have happened in a country that claims to love the civil rights movement, built monuments to. But that's in the future. For now, the White House just wants us to shut up and celebrate, because henceforth, every official Joe Biden hires will be a first. Not the first in achievement, not the first in the class. No, better than that. Much better. First in appearance. The first person who looks a certain way or sleeps with a certain kind of person. The first in identity. That's what matters. So you can imagine, it was with deep and justifiable pride that the administration announced that after a grueling nationwide search, they had finally located a gay White House communications director. Hooray! The news was announced by America's first illiterate White House press secretary. Watch her beam.
And I look forward to welcoming Ben Bolt. As you all know, he has been announced to replace Kate as communications director back to the White House. I also know that Ben is making history. As you know, we believe here in the Biden-Harris White House that representation matters. He will be the first openly gay communications director, which is very, very important indeed.
Yay! He's gay! And that's, quote, very, very important. It's pretty thrilling. Finally, gay people will know they can achieve something in this country. They can leave their jobs at the asphalt plant and head to Washington for fame and fortune. Next thing you know, they'll have TV shows on Bravo. The possibilities are exciting. He is their Jackie Robinson. But you do wonder, what exactly is the difference in real life between a gay communications director and a straight communications director? Are they really that different? We weren't aware that communications director's sex life had any bearing on his official duties, but that we don't know everything. So we called over to the White House today to see how this new gay communications director will be a massive upgrade over the last straight communications director. Unfortunately, they never explained the difference, so we're going to have to take it on faith and just celebrate with everybody else. Joe Biden's doing that. As he told us repeatedly, do not look beneath the surface. No. Appearance is all that matters. Not only can you judge a book by its cover, yes you can. From here on out, you're required to judge a book by its cover. Period.
This will be the first cabinet ever that is evenly composed of as many women as men in the cabinet. This will be the first cabinet ever with the majority of people of color occupying this cabinet. And it has more than a dozen history-making appointments, including the first woman Secretary of Treasury, the first African-American Defense Secretary, the first openly gay cabinet member, and the first Native American cabinet secretary.
That sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. It's like one of those old-time Valentines. The question is it a good cabinet? Are they capable? No, that's not even relevant. Lloyd Austin, we should say, the Secretary of Defense, is definitely a first, and we're going to give him credit for that. He is the very first Secretary of Defense to spend millions of dollars shooting down thrift store balloons with missiles. That's never happened, and he did it. He's the first Secretary of Defense to hand the Taliban thousands of armored vehicles, drones, and helicopters to build them their own army for free. Nobody even thought of doing it before Lloyd Austin arrived. And of course, Lloyd Austin was the first defense secretary to wear not simply a surgical mask to protect himself from the flu virus, but also a full plastic face shield, like he was welding. So you can't say Lloyd Austin hasn't broken important glass ceilings. He has. But weirdly, his boss didn't mention any of that. As far as Joe Biden is concerned,
I want you to be my coach. I want you to be my coach.
In a world with more data bias than ever, you need responsible AI more than ever. SaaSfire.
And Austin's main achievement in life is his genetic. Lloyd Austin was born great. Some people just are. Richard Levine, by contrast, was not born great. Richard Levine was born a white man, which is to say untouchable. The bottom of the caste system, that is bad. But here's the good news, ladies and gentlemen. With the help of the Wiggins and Falsons, Richard Levine rose above his station. He is now a she is now an act. Talk about inspiring. Watch this.
I'm honored to serve as the first female 4-star officer of the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps.
Now, the great thing about Richard Levine's new identity, it wipes away, it washes away, not to use theological language, all previous mistakes, otherwise known as sins. Those don't count anymore because Richard Levine is now Rachel Levine. So, Richard Levine exposed nursing home residents to coke in Pennsylvania, got long killed. Came back with his own mother for those facilities.
Mm-hmm.
not Ukrainian, so Joe Biden's not interested enough to visit. Unfortunately, no one in East Palestine thought to pay Joe Biden's son $8 grand a month. If someone had done that, someone had been wise enough to pay off the Biden family 8 years ago, things would be different. Here's how Joe Biden might talk to them now.
It's going to deliver much needed humanitarian assistance as well as food, water, medicine, shelter, and other aid to Ukrainians displaced by Russian and provide aid for those seeking refuge in other countries from Ukraine. It's also going to help schools and hospitals open. It's going to allow pensions and social support to be paid to Ukrainian people so they have something in their pocket.
So not everything that winds its way through Congress is of equal importance. Most legislation in Congress means nothing in the long term. Nuclear war means everything in the long term. So what's the issue on which both parties seem aligned? Oh, the issue that matters. So there is no opposition party. Both parties seem to agree that the administration that shot down weather balloons with $400,000 heat-seeking missiles is capable of navigating an incredibly complex conflict in Eastern Europe where the stakes are existential. No problem. We can pull this off. Everybody involved is Winston Churchill. No one on the Republican side seems outraged on a gut level that the President of the United States is personally visiting an autocrat in a tracksuit in Kiev while he ignores the exposure of thousands of American citizens to toxic chemicals we can't identify. So Republicans in the Senate have a leader. You might be interested in what he thinks is important. Here he is.
I'm going to try to help him explain to the American people that defeating the Russians in Ukraine is the single most important event going on in the world right now. It will save us an enormous amount of money down the road if the Ukrainians can succeed. They're not asking for any of our personnel. They're asking us for financial help.
So the thing is, that's not rhetoric. Mitch McConnell believes what he just said. I'm going to help explain. You couldn't help explain how to get from here to the nearest gas station. You're beyond the ability to explain. And you're way beyond the ability to lead the opposition in the United States Senate. But for some reason, McConnell and so many other Republican leaders and talk show hosts have been completely brainwashed by the idea that the United States will benefit from a war with Russia. Well, now that Russia has joined forces with China to create a bloc against the United States that we cannot defeat, that will control perhaps the majority of the world. Really? And you did that, by the way. You laughed at Trump, and here we are, facing the end of control of a lot of the world because you so unwisely managed the power that you inherited. What's your answer now, Mitch McConnell? You're welcome on this show anytime to explain. Tulsi Gabbard is a former member of Congress, a former presidential candidate, and one of the very few people in the world who went on television after this invasion a year ago and said, this could get really dangerous. You were right. And now that China is aligning with Russia and supporting the Russian war effort effectively against us, this seems like a massive turning point.
We make USAA for homeowners who like being ready. That's why we have safety tips for things like fires, home security, and USAA insurance just in case. USAA.
Look at the little cow. Okay. Welcome back to Loop Schoolies, guys. We just got shipped live cows in the mail. Water cows. Yeah, I'm talking ranches. They like to call ranches water cows. But we got 3 in this bag. I got them from luminous goldfish. I'm gonna unbox them and show you guys what I got. Okay, so I went ahead and took the shipping label off because I don't want to post my address out there for someone to find and come kill me. But here, oh, I just heard one of them swim. Can you guys hear that? I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm hearing them swim. Okay. Oh man, look at these guys. So they like to pack them in one giant bag. All together. This is a bit heavy. Oh my lord. Look at those fat boys. Look at those fat cows. Oh my gosh, you guys have to see this. These are beautiful. These are so beautiful. Alright, check this out. Check this out. We got our little calico milk cow, whatever you want to call him. We got our tiger boy. Look at our little tiger boy. And we also got our orange guy. Orange puffer face. So I'm going to get these guys in the water acclimating, and then you get a closer look at them. Alright, so this is their quarantine tank, and these are the fat fish. Now this is a large water mass. Typically I acclimate fish for around 20 minutes, but I might leave these guys in here for maybe even 35 minutes, considering how large the mass of water they're in. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's probably okay, actually. It's better for the fish if it's this way, so they don't get crammed in a corner. Alrighty. So I'll come back in 35 minutes, and we'll release them into the water. Okay, so I just realized they are double bagged, as they should be. So I'm going to remove the outer bag, just so they acclimate. Sharp. Look at that little tiger fella. He's adorable. Actually, I think that's a sheep. It's probably a sheep. We can sex them later on. Look at that. Look at that guy. That orange one over there has a super puffy face. He's like a little dog. We got a dog, we got a cow, we got a tiger. Look at that. Alright guys, so they have been acclimating for a little over half an hour now. And I'm pretty sure the temperature has matched. I'm going to obviously feel with my hand just to make sure. But if the temperature's matched, I'm going to put them in here. And I'm not entirely sure what medication is in here. It's probably fine if I did pour it in, but I think I'm going to leave the medication. I'm going to leave the medicated water that they're in right now separate. So let me open up this bag. Wow. And let me get my hand in there. Feel that water temperature. Feel that water temperature. Yeah, that feels... It feels the exact same to me. That's how you know it's okay to mix them. Alright, which guy should I put in there first? Orange guy? Let's put the orange guy. Come here, little dog. Look at him! Look at him! There you go. There you go. Oh. He is so cute. Alright, next, let's get a tiger. Come here, tiger. Look at that tiger guy. Look at him. Alright, last one. We got the little cow. Come here, little cow. Alright, chill. Oh, look at the little cow. Okay. Wow, they are so beautiful. Okay, so I just released them, and anytime you release goldfish in a new tank, you can expect them to be a little stressed. And these two guys right there, they do seem a little stressed. They're just chilling at the bottom. They're not being super active. But this guy, this little orange guy, seems like he's never been better. He is swimming around. He is looking for food. I bet he would eat if I threw some food in there. I don't know if I will, but these ones are a little slower. But honestly, like every minute they're getting a little more active. But they are chilling. So usually this is not smart, but I did throw in just a couple pellets in there to see who would eat some, just to see kind of to gauge their stress levels. And what's funny is just before I started recording this, that little cow guy over there that's looking all stressed, he was going around eating some of the pellets. Now, obviously, he's still stressed, and he needs some time to recuperate before you start feeding them normally. But I do like to throw in just a couple pellets to gauge how stressed they are. And we're going to give them some time to recuperate, and we'll see what happens.
This holiday season, enjoy fast and reliable home internet for your family and the extended family when you switch to Fios Home Internet.
Okay guys, it has been 2 hours and the fish are looking way better. This guy is up and swimming around. He's doing his to like and subscribe. And now enjoy a minute.
Look at your little chick. Look at her cheeks jiggle. Why do her cheeks?
Folks, it's finally here. The package is here. The basement. This is oh boy. So I'm gonna be honest. Can you send me something special? This is just as much of a surprise to you. Wow, so you're kind of for like people waiting in the box.
There's a fish in here too. Oh my goodness, there's a fish in here too. A big white fish. Guys, look at this one. It has this little orange goatee. It has a little orange. Wow.
Over here, this one also supposed to be a female. The back of the same temperature and not add any additional stress. But definitely the temperatures are equal now. Now I'm gonna grab her. Oh my goodness. Guys, look at the size. Oh, guys, she's full of eggs. She's full of eggs. You guys see that? Those are eggs coming out of her. Now we're going to open up the second one over here. Wow, look at this lady. Wow. Wow, look at that. Wow. I'm not dumping this water in here. This is very dirty water. So right off the bat, this one was definitely a little more stressed out. You know, she's not swimming as much. This lady over here, she doesn't seem stressed at all. But it's expected them to be a little bit stressed after shipping. This is also the reason why you don't really want to feed them right when you get them. You don't want to feed them because they're stressed out. But look at the chunky cheeks. Look at the chunky cheeks on this lady here. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Look at this lady. She's like a beluga whale. She's like a little beluga whale. things, and they're very large too. They're probably worth $300-400 each. So I gotta say a massive thanks to Jimmy from Jimmy Goldfish for sending me these guys. I know this little lady is kind of stressed out, but she should be fine. She should be fine within a couple days. She also has a bunch of. Look at her cheeks jiggle. Why do her cheeks? This girl released a bunch of eggs, so hopefully, even in a couple days, she'll release the rest of the eggs, and she'll be good to go again. I added the salt in here just like 5 minutes ago, and she already seems to be doing a little bit better.
Ever since we became friends, you've always inspired.
The little beluga whale and the chunkiest cheeks. Hey there, Billy Bobby Goldfish II. I can't get over the orange goatee. So I did add some salt, erythromycin. There's a little bit of the redness on the fins just to be safe. But already, after adding the salt and waiting, today I'm dying my aquatic nuggets blue. I was not a fan.
Tired of running back and forth to the pharmacy for pet prescriptions? With Chewy Pharmacy.
Inside Out. Meet the team behind Riley's dreams.
I make sweet dreams for
Alright guys, I'm sorry this is not a Viola update, but this is a little more unfortunate of a situation. I came home to find this baby severely infected with what looks like a very severe fungus, but also possibly hole in the head disease, because there was what seems to be a flesh-eating bacteria, flesh-eating disease that had eaten this fish's flesh down to the bone in the head. I don't know how this happened, I don't know why this happened. I was out of town for a week, and I came back to find a fish like this. This is not Viola, this is a different fish. But like, this is part of the reason why I hate leaving town, is that when I come back, something always goes wrong. Part of her fin was gone too, so I had to make the very tough call, because I actually am leaving town again tomorrow for another week-long trip. I had to make the tough call to euthanize this fish, because I'm not going to be attentive here to take care of them, and I don't want to have this fish be around and just simply pass away while I'm gone, because I know it's going to be a painful death. That disease is taking over. I don't even know if I'd be able to cure it as is, because it looks very severe and very aggressive. because my family said they didn't even notice it. And, you know, I went over there and it was very clear to me. So right now I'm showing you how I went about euthanizing this fish. You have to add clove oil to this bottle and basically shake up the clove oil so it's kind of an emulsion within a separate bottle, and then put the fish in a different container. I actually ended up peeling back that fungus layer and found the skin very raw, and I could see the skull of the fish down like at the edge of it. And basically you have to pour this emulsified, you know, liquid with the clove oil on there, and slowly over time this will put the fish to sleep, kind of you know, seize them up and kill them, but you know, it kills them in a peaceful way. Like this is what they look like right after you add a little bit, and you know, they will slow down even more and more so. I'm not gonna show you what she looks like after she died, but I will say after they slow down and kind of really get still, you can add some more and then finish the euthanizing process. But it's really unfortunate I had to do this because I didn't want to let her just sit here and die and have that flesh-eating bacteria or fungus take over her while I'm gone. And I know my family will not know what to do or how to do it, so I had to make a tough call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to Luke's Goldies. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the dreaded Dropsy. Every goldfish keeper's worst nightmare is to realize their goldfish has Dropsy. Now, what is Dropsy? Dropsy stinks. I'm talking, what is Dropsy? Dropsy is basically, for some reason, multiple reasons why, goldfish cannot regulate the amount of fluid inside their body. Think about it. Your goldfish is a creature that's made up by mass mostly of water, and they live in a body of water. So it's very important, it's very imperative that they're able to control the amount of water that's inside their body and the amount of water, well, they can't control the amount of water out of their body, but basically control the regulation of water flow in, water flow out. Now, if they fail to do that, if they do not do that correctly, bad things happen. I'm going to be 100% real with you here. If your goldfish has Dropsy, it is an extremely large chance that it's done for. I know that's probably not what you're going to see if you watch this video. It's probably because you might have just looked up, my goldfish has Dropsy, what do I do? I'm going to break it down, no sugarcoating here. There's a large chance it's done for. However, I always advocate fighting to the end if possible. And here's the thing. So as I was saying, Dropsy is a problem where fish can't regulate the water inside of its body. Why is that? Most likely a problem with their kidneys. Now, why is your goldfish having a problem with their kidneys? Well, it could be an unknown reason. It could be that they're having this kidney failure. But it could be now that they have an internal infection if the reason is they have an internal bacterial infection, you should celebrate. You should be screaming for joy. Now, why would you like the fact that your goldfish has an internal bacterial infection? Because really the only way that you can come out of dropsy, if the cause is purely an internal bacterial infection, that's the one way you can really treat it. But really, you're not going to be able to know what to treat it. That's why if the goldfish has dropsy, you go to treat it anyway. You want to hope that the cause is bacterial infection, but you don't actually know. So how do you identify that your goldfish has dropsy? Well, it's really hard to catch it early. It is kind of hard to catch it early, but one sign, a couple signs that your goldfish is starting to develop dropsy is if their body begins to float and they begin to become less active. If their body begins to float and they become less active, that could be a sign, okay, maybe they're developing dropsy. And if you notice their eyes start to bulge out a little bit, they're a little more out than they normally are, maybe they're developing dropsy. Now this can be hard to do sometimes because some goldfish are generally just slower. Some goldfish already have big bellies. How can you tell the belly is getting bigger? What if it's just growing up? Some goldfish, like telescopes, already have bulging eyes. How do you tell if a telescope goldfish has bulging eyes? Bulging eyes is what it is. So it can be hard to tell sometimes, but those are some telltale signs. Slow down, a little extra big on the belly, a little on the bulging side of the eyes could be a sign they're holding in some water in their system, and they're starting to get a little dropsy-like. The higher the chance, if you catch it early, the higher chance that you'll be able to cure it. So, if it is a bacterial-based infection, here's what you can do. You want to get some antibiotics. Maybe you want to do both at once. Furin 2 and Canaplex might help you fight the bacterial infection. Also, metronidazole. I don't have a package of it like that. Looks like this. I can link it below. Also, metronidazole. Those can help you fight dropsy in a goldfish if it's bacterial-based. If it's not bacterial-based, if your goldfish is just having organ failure, you can't do anything. We're going to do an organ transplant on a goldfish. I don't even think it's ever been done. So, it's organ failure, kidney failure. I've never heard of someone doing a kidney transplant on a goldfish. I think sorry to say, goldfish is probably done for. But if it's bacterial and you catch it early, you want to use antibiotics. You want to get the fish in a hospital tank. You want to put a heater in the hospital tank. You want to up the heater to maybe 82 degrees over a little course of time, maybe up it to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. You also want to put some Epsom salt in the water. Epsom salt helps draw the fluid out of the fish. Now, is that going to cure the problem? No, it's like a temporary, just like a little bandage over the giant scar. It's like a little temporary thing. But you've got to heal the scar. You've got to fix the scar for the fish to actually get better. But if you put some Epsom salt in the water, as I'm going to link in my guide below on Epsom salt and salt baths in general, and also do Epsom salt baths multiple times a day, if you do that, that'll help draw the fluid out of the fish and kind of increase the chance that they survive this. But if you don't address the root cause, the internal bacterial infection causing the dropsy, causing the dysfunction in the kidneys, it's just a temporary fix. You're just going to extend it and the fish will die. So the only way to really treat dropsy is if it's not organ failure, if it's really just bacterial-based, you treat the bacterial infection, and you use Epsom salt to draw the fluid out of the fish. If you address all three of those, you will help the fish. It's also better to increase the temperature when you're trying to deal with dropsy, maybe 80, 82 degrees, somewhere around there. Different places, they say different things, but generally what I've done is around 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I actually have a video back a while ago on how I cured my goldfish, Georgie, how I cured his dropsy. There's many different ways you can go about trying to attempt to cure dropsy, but I will say, as you guys know, I did have to euthanize him later on, because even if you're able to save your fish from dropsy, there is a chance that it could be permanently affected. The health of the goldfish could be permanently compromised, and physically and functionally, they're not the same fish as they used to be. Now, there is a chance they'll be like that. There is a chance that they'll be full back to health, 100, like 99% like good. But I will say, if you come down and you see a goldfish with dropsy, that he is not going to make it, or you can maybe make them make it if you're in scales. And I'll also say, if you notice large hind-pointing scales, that just means you notice the scales like literally sticking out. If you notice that to a large degree, it could be too late. That's the thing that stinks about Dropsy. The most help.
From Barbie. I shouldn't have. Verizon whole home Wi-Fi, so we get internet in every...
Okay, this guy has some very serious problems. Is he dead? But right now, this guy is not responding. In this video, I'm going to go to some pet stores and pick out the worst looking goldfish I can find. The ones that are the most sick, the most problems. And I'm going to put them in this tank here and show you guys. $99, $100. Great gets removed. We have 1 ppm of nitrate. And then this reasons I have to do water changes. No! It's volume water changes because you love to feel because it's fun. That water always, the problem is always over. It's not it has to be stable and healthy water pressure. The water pressure is healthy.
More than 50% of ornamental fish die because of low oxygen level. We think our fish is just fine because we can't see this. But it is important to understand that the signs of low oxygen level in the aquariums. It will help to save your little fish easily. In this video, we will know about the top 4 signs of low oxygen level at the aquarium and what are the main causes of low oxygen level there. So without wasting time, let's dive deep into this video. You can't get the signs if you casually look at your aquarium.